Dr. Umar Johnson is a professional school psychologist and educator. He wrote a profound book called Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. Now, this is a very interesting book that I find we're going to have a great interview, and we're going to get some questions and some concerns answered, because I myself can relate to this. I reached a point where not a son of mine, but a daughter that I had taken I had taken the choice to put my child on psychotropics, on the medications that they prescribed for the ADD, ADHD. Mine was prescribed with both, actually, at the same time. So they said it was a very odd case. And so if there are parents out there that are suffering from, dealing with the same attention deficit disorders or hypertension disorders, and we're going to find out some other things that you can do about this. So let's tune in. Our special guest is here, Dr. Umar Johnson. How are you doing today? It's great to have you on Rashomah's Conscious Couch. Dr. Umar Johnson? Oh, let me tune you in. I'm sorry. Okay, I believe I have you there now. Yes, I can. How are you?
All is well, and yourself?
Awesome. I am doing great. It is a pleasure to have you on the show today. This is a very serious and profound topic here. The book that you wrote was totally awesome. I wish I knew about you. I wish I read it years ago. My grandmother used to tell me that I was just like, those kids, had hypertension and everything, and they were telling her to do the same thing with me, but she was like, oh, no, she'll grow out of it. And eventually I did. I just grew to be an adult that can multitask really well because they go one thing, it just irritates me. So I'm a great multitasker. So this is going to be a great interview, and for those who are not familiar with you and your work, please take a moment to tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'm Dr. Umar Johnson, Doctor of Clinical Psychology, Certified School Psychologist, and School Principal, author of the book, as you mentioned, Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. But, of course, we focus on the girls as well, currently working on building the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy, which will be America's first school for Black boys based specifically off of the principles of Pan-Africanism as taught by the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and International Economics. I am also founder of the National Independent Black Parent Association, kinsman to the great Frederick Douglass, and former Minister of Education of Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL.
Awesome. That is a long title, but of a lot of great things that a lot of people need access to in the community. While we're on the topic of the schools that you were mentioning that you are establishing, how's that going so far?
Well, we're still in the hunt. A couple of disappointments along the way, nothing that we couldn't deal with. And by disappointments, I simply mean that there were several schools that we were able to afford, but were not able to secure because once the owners found out that Dr. Umar Johnson was the purchaser, they pulled out of the negotiation phase. And so right now I'm even considering filing a complaint with the Federal Department of, I believe it's the Federal Department of Housing or Real Estate or something to that effect, where you can actually file a complaint of discrimination for discrimination in commercial purchases. Most protections are for residential purchases, but there are some federal protections for commercial discrimination as well, because over this past year or two, I've faced a lot of commercial real estate discrimination. At least I can count at least 8 schools that we should have had by now that we did not get purely because I was the buyer. There was one in Mount Vernon, New York. There was one in Trenton, New Jersey. There's another in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There's several in Detroit, Michigan, another in Newark, New Jersey. At least 8, probably a dozen schools that we should have had over the past year or two that we didn't get because I'm the person making the purchase.
Interesting. And I believe that because I see it in real estate often with investors, especially investors of color, where they do things like either deny them the loan after they send an identification or reduce the loan-to-value amount percentage that they're able to receive on a cash out. So, I would think that because what you do of such a good cause, that they wouldn't look at it at that point, but because of the strides that you are trying to make and change in the community, I can see where that occurs, where that happens. Have you ever thought about, or is it part of your plan to establish an online school, especially for access for homeschoolers?
Yeah, not interested. I'm not interested in an online school. I don't believe that children learn well online. The popularity of the online school movement, and I'm glad you asked the question because I get asked that all the time, why not do an online school? Well, with an online school, too much responsibility is put on the child to teach themselves, and too much responsibility is put on the parent to be a conduit for the lessons of the teacher who is not physically able to actually teach that lesson to the child. And my issue with online schooling is that more than half of all education is socialization. Half of all education is socialization. And the medium of instruction is interaction. That's the medium of instruction. Children learn by the interaction of the teacher. You don't learn by the interaction of a computer screen. And there's no evidence, absolutely none, that shows children learn better at a computer than they do being taught by a human being. So I am not a fan of it. The reason why online schools are so popular is because financially they are very, very lucrative. If you have an online school, that cuts your staff, that cuts your building costs, that cuts transportation. You don't have to worry about lunch. You don't have to worry about after-school programs. You don't have to worry about extracurricular activities. All you have to do is give that kid a computer and put a curricular program onto that computer. That's all you need is a computer and an academic program, and you have an online school. It's financially, it is a dream, but practically, from my perspective, it is a nightmare. And I would caution Black parents from online, way of learning. Now, there are situations where I support it. For example, whenever I speak with parents whose children are at risk of being expelled or suspended from school, sent to a juvenile detention center, or placed in an alternative learning environment, then without question, I support the online school. There's been times I've told parents, pull your kid out of school and go ahead and sign him up for a cyber charter school. Sign him up for it. Why? Because I'd rather him be at home learning on the computer than going to school where he risks being beat up, hurt, suspended, expelled, special educated, medicated, or adjudicated. So I do see it as a effective Band-Aid for children who are experiencing dysfunctions in the school, be it, things that they're doing or things that are being done to them. But as the primary mode of education for Black kids, absolutely not. I don't support it at all. And I would end it by saying this. The number one problem we have as a people is self-hatred. Every problem we have stems from our self-hatred. The fact we haven't even risen up and protested white supremacy the way that we need to is because of our self-hatred. So anyone who wants to solve the Black reality has to be about educating Black children. And your main goal in educating those children is teaching them how to work together, which is exactly what we cannot do as a people, which is why we're still suffering these problems 153 years after slavery. So the main foundation of learning for Black kids must be how to interact and socialize and get along with other Black kids. There's no way in heaven you're going to learn that by being at a computer.
Now, I have noticed that some of these programs, online programs, they are more interactive, like the traditional ones, as you mentioned before. They're just, online tuning in and just doing your work, in a system. Now they've integrated audio, video, chat, even coaching and mentoring. So it's kind of revolutionized a little bit. What do you say about those aspects of technology that has been integrated to make it have more of a instructor and interactive conditioning or atmosphere for the children now?
There is no replacement for a teacher being in the same space and time as your child, being able to instruct them directly, being able to transmit their energy. I think sometimes we forget that education is a spiritual activity. It is spiritual. You transmit your energy into those children. You cannot effectively do that by way of a computer screen. Although there may have been advances in online education, I would still maintain that there is no replacement whatsoever for a strong, positive, caring, loving, and effective instructor in the classroom. There's absolutely no replacement for it. I'll give you a comparison. One thing that's growing in popularity now is online therapy. So because of the lack of psychologists and therapists out there, some people are needing to have their therapy sessions online, the only way they can get it. Just like with online education, I don't have a problem with that if it's the only way they can get it. But guess what? The same thing happens in therapy. There's a qualitative loss, a loss of quality when a person has to experience their therapist by way of a computer, okay, versus having someone who you can see, who can see your feelings directly, whose energy you can pick up, whose nuances you can detect. Even for the therapist, working with someone online, you still don't get the same first-person vibration that lets you know what's really going on with this patient, but that lets you know that this is more about depression than anxiety, or more about low self-esteem than bipolar, or it's more, it's more about a family dysfunction than it is about alcoholism. There's certain nuances that you pick up on in a patient that you can only pick up on in the first person by being right there in their environment, not by way of a conduit such as a computer screen. It's no different in education. The educator is experiencing a loss of quality in teaching, as well as the student is experiencing a loss of quality in learning, because there's so many nuances, vibrations, and energies that you pick up on when you are in someone's face that you would never pick up on by way of a computer, even though you can see them. Again, there's a qualitative loss in the transmission of energy there that is absolutely necessary when you teach. So, for example, I teach that the two most important things of education is to teach our kids divine fearlessness and supreme self-confidence. Supreme self-confidence and divine fearlessness. That is an energy that has to be put in those kids, and you can't put that into them by way of a computer screen. It has to be in the flesh. It's like going to church. You can go to online church. You can watch church on television. You can watch your favorite pastor Sunday morning. People watch me on YouTube all the time. And one of the comments that I get when people finally get an opportunity to come and hear Dr. Umar speak, they say, I've been watching you for years. But guess what? All of the online lectures do not compare to the experience of you in the person. It's no different for education. It's no different for therapy. It's no different than listening to a pastor or a presenter. There is no replacement for a living, breathing human soul transmitting energy and spirit to a child. You cannot replace that, and you cannot simulate that with a computer.
You know what? As the way you broke it down, I can 100% agree to that the socialization aspect of it is very important. I, being a parent that homeschooled mine as they were little, just because of the educational system that we have here in Duval County, Jacksonville, Florida, it was a great option for me to take charge. Because they were doing their job. It was just a high failing rate and things of that nature. But I recently had taken one of my older ones and put them back into the school system for the socialization, for that type of experience that you just mentioned. And I can see the nurturing, growth, just the adaptation to all of the different personalities that she has to deal with, getting past conflict and resolved and so on and so forth. But that brings me into the other school model that's out there, and there are popping up here, at least in my area, a lot of homeschool groups, small private homeschool groups, because you can have a group in person of about 10, and you don't have to, go through the whole getting licensed to be a school education type of thing. For those type of people that are giving their children through these homeschool groups an in-person socializational experience, do you see sometime in the future for your curriculum to be available to homeschool groups like that, or create an extension to your program?
I may create a homeschool alternative for my school program and for my curriculum, but it will not be marketed directly to parents or to homeschool groups. And there's a very important reason for that. First of all, the most important thing in the school is not the curriculum, it's the teachers. I can't understate that enough.
Okay.
The curriculum is the learning program on paper. That's all it is. But the teacher is the person who's actually going to transmit that curriculum into digestible chunks of academic protein, which is what we call the lesson plans. Your school is only as good as your teacher's ability to translate curriculum into meaningful lesson plans. In other words, you go shopping for the house. Mom and dad go shopping for the house. They got a refrigerator and a freezer full of everything, fish, veggies, fruit, whatever the case may be, healthy food that you need your children to like and digest it. Well, guess what? 3 different parents have the exact same groceries in the refrigerator, but the only children who are going to eat that food is the children for whom their parents can take that veggie meal and turn it into something delicious and palatable for them. For those parents who cannot take that food and make it taste good for the children to eat it, they're not going to eat it. That's exactly how curriculum and lesson plans work. Curriculum is the food in the refrigerator. That's simply what you have that you want to feed your family. You want to feed the kids this curriculum, you want to feed your family this food, and you're vegetarian. Okay? Well, guess what? Those children may not be used to eating vegetarian, so you got to put a twist on that food to make it acceptable to them. And then they eat it, and when they eat it, they get all the nutrients and the protein that you intended them to have. It's the same thing in the school. You have this curriculum, but your teachers are the chefs. The teacher is the chef. They have to take that food out the fridge and cook it in a way that makes it taste-worthy, okay, and palatable to those children. So you can have the greatest curriculum. It means nothing. You got to have the greatest teachers. I always say if I have to choose between a lousy curriculum and strong teachers, or lousy teachers and a strong curriculum, give me the strong teachers. Because curriculum don't teach nobody. Curriculum is just a plan on paper. And everybody say curriculum ain't the most important thing. I'll give you a therapy analysis, and I always use a therapy analysis because I'm both an educator and a therapist, and the two worlds are so related, and it was being a therapist that led me into education, actually. But it's the same thing in therapy. You have a treatment plan. Every person in therapy gets a treatment plan. So you're suffering from a suicidal depression, okay? And I got the monster treatment plan. But guess what? I can give that treatment plan to therapist A. They don't know what to do with it. I can give it to therapist B. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know the appropriate therapeutic techniques to use in session to help move that client along. I may be the only person who can implement my treatment plan. So when people say, give your curriculum out, I'm not doing that because my curriculum is only as good as the people implementing it and my ability to supervise them, which is another issue I have with both home schools and with online schools. Okay, there's no principal. The principal is the direct supervisor of instruction. That's why you have a principal in the school. You don't have a principal in a home school, and you don't have a principal in an online school. Now, you do technically, have a principal for the online school, but that principal doesn't come out to the house and observe that child learning on their computer program. Okay, they are a principal in fact, but they're not a principal in practice. So who is the person supervising this instruction that's happening online and happening in people's homes to make sure the curriculum is being delivered as intended? There's no one there. There's no one there. That homeschool program is only as good as the parent delivering it. And guess what I know? Most parents, most of us, we're human beings. Okay, so most of us are going to have difficulty evaluating our own work. That's exactly why you need supervisors or principals in instruction, because no parent is going to say, I'm doing a horrible job homeschooling my kids. They're not going to say that. In fact, I see the opposite. I see parents exaggerating gains when there actually aren't any gains. Now, I support homeschools. I do. And I really support homeschool network as opposed to isolated homeschooling. And the reason I support the network functions, if it's done right, functions like a school. It functions like a school because what you have there, hopefully, the parents are able to coach each other. The parents are able to supervise each other. The parents may be able to employ the services of a school principal to come in and help them with the curriculum and the lesson planning. So when you have a network, it's better because you have group accountability as opposed to an isolated parent out there just trying to do the best that they can without no support. So when it is a true network, that's almost pretty much like a school. I have no issue with that except one thing. One thing. There is no replacement for systematic education in the Black community. It must be systematized. Homeschools are not systematic. Online schools are not systematic. Okay, traditional schooling can be systematic. And the reason why education has to be systemic, it has to be systemic for us, is because we have to create a new collective consciousness for Black people. In order to solve our problems, you have to create a new collective consciousness. Chinese have a collective consciousness. Arabs have a collective consciousness. Jews, Anglo-Saxons, East Indians, they have a collective consciousness. We don't have it. We don't think the same way about anything. And because of that, education for our children must be about forging a collective consciousness. And guess what? You cannot forge a collective consciousness when you got a million different homes with a million different homeschool programs with a million different parents all teaching that particular curriculum the way that they want to teach it. Although homeschooling is a good Band-Aid, it is not a solution. Band-Aids are something you do temporarily to stop the bleeding, okay? But a solution is something you put in place to prevent the cut from ever taking place again. And so I support homeschooling as a temporary measure. I will support online schooling as a temporary measure. It is not a solution. A solution is when you come into a Black community and every single child in that community is subject to the same rituals. They are subject to the same curriculum. They are subject to the same school climate, the same school culture, and the same principles to live by. They got to all get Garveyism. They got to all be taught how to eat the lid. They got to all be taught how to grow their own food. They have to all be taught how to work together. You have to forge unity and collective consciousness. And you cannot forge unity and collective consciousness with a whole bunch of individualized different homeschool operations.
Now, some of the things that you were mentioning about the experience with the teachers and that atmosphere that you're creating to deliver your curriculum, it sounds like it's something that is forged to around learning styles. You know, the visual, the auditory, the verbal, the what they call the physical kinesthetics. I noticed that in a traditional schools that they have one way of teaching, and they put these children off into these different ADD models, ADHD, ESE, because they're not adapting to that child's learning styles. Is that part of the reason why you moved in this direction to forge that experience? Because it's more of teaching the teachers how to adapt to the different learning styles to make the children be successful?
Well, here's the thing. A couple things on learning styles. Children have different learning preferences, but most kids can be taught through any modality. In other words, me personally, growing up, I am very visual. I'm not auditory. Can I do auditory learning? Certainly. But my preference is visual. You have kids who are more kinesthetic, hands-on, than visual. Can they do visual? Sure. But their preference is hands-on. The goal is to have a balance. That's where we go wrong. There's no balance in the way our children are taught now. Most teachers don't teach none of the modalities, really. They just sit at the front and they just simply talk off the curriculum. They ain't teaching a child. They ain't teaching to the test. They ain't teaching to the child, and they're not teaching to the textbook. They're teaching to their own level of interest as an educator. They are teaching to their own level of interest as an educator. No focus on anything. So although I respect learning preferences, okay, I would stop short of saying this child can only learn this way. Every child can learn every way. They simply have preferences. And the way that we make sure all children learn is by balancing out the different modalities that we use. Stated another way, I would say if you motivate a child to learn, you could teach them any way you want. The issue ain't the learning style. The issue is that we don't have classroom leaders who are committed enough to their craft to motivate our children to learn. That's the problem. You have unmotivated children because you have unmotivated teachers. There's no way you can have unmotivated children without unmotivated teachers. I can go into a classroom, and I'm a former school principal, by the way, so I speak from experience. I can go into a classroom of unmotivated kids, and I can motivate them. Why? Because it was the teacher who's responsible for them not being motivated in the first place. But nobody wants to hold the teachers responsible for that. No one wants to hold teachers accountable for the level of motivation that children come into the classroom with, especially black kids. And the reason they don't want to hold them to that is because most teachers are white, and no one is going to punish white teachers for selling black children.
You know, that reminds me, and I'm glad of having this discussion because there are parents that do stand up. And when they do stand up, they feel as if the response they get is being attacked or being put on some type of pedestal to make them feel like their concerns were wrong or inferior. My personal experience is that I had a child in a Montessori school, and he was going for Spanish. So everything was in Spanish, no English, since kindergarten, so he makes it to the 4th grade. And this teacher brings me in one day, and she says, and she slides this book across towards me. She said, you see this book? He cannot read this. He could not comprehend it. He cannot translate it back to me, and you need to take him from out of this program and put him in a regular English program. He doesn't complete his work. So that was her complaint. So I'm just listening to her because, you know, me being the parent that works all day, come home and help, work on the schoolwork, I'm making sure that the things that are brought home are done. Even though I don't understand it, I have a dictionary. So I tell my son, I say, come here. I want, Mommy doesn't understand Spanish, so I want for you to read this book to me and then tell me what it says at the end. He flies through the book, even answers the questions at the end. I said, okay, baby, go over there and have a seat. So when he, got out of our way, I said, now everything that you just sat here and told me he could not do, he just showed me he could do it. So I said, the problem is not him. The problem is you. So I went to the principal, made that complaint. And then when I showed up, it's a whole panel of people there, the school psychologists and all these people that they didn't even inform me of that was there. And, and so the focus was that, as far as her recovery plan was based on what she does for her classroom, but you're not complaining against all the students in your classroom, and we're not talking about what you do for your class, for your whole class, and we're talking about the complaint against this one child and what have you done for a plan for this one particular child. And so, that kind of, feeds into the hand of and of course it was a white teacher, and I have a melanated son, and I told them this is the United States of America. We have a lot of people that come into this country and their first language is not English, so whatever you do for them to make them successful in English, that's what you're going to do for him in a recovery program. And so it was a very interesting experience, and I think that parents that stand up are troublemakers. I've had, them say, why don't no one else complains? Why don't you just, do or act like everyone else? And that kind of brings
most parents don't fight. That's because most parents don't fight.
Yeah.
The reason you get that pushback from the system, and the reason why other courageous and caring black parents get that pushback from America's public and charter school systems is because most black parents accept whatever the school gives them. They accept it. They accept the treatment. They accept the curriculum. They accept the grades. They accept the culture, the climate. They at the level of motivation. They accept the level of concern. They accept the level of disconnectedness from the teachers. Most black parents do not fight. And I know this, 20 years in education, seeing it from both as a school psychologist and a school principal, most black parents do not fight. We are hypnotized by white folks, absolutely hypnotized. So when you get some black parents who do speak up and speak out, they have to take on the whole system because you're looked at as an oddity. You are an oddity. They look at you and say, okay, what's her problem? Because most black parents ain't got no problem with us doing this, and that's why I started the National Independent Black Parent Association. That's the purpose of the NIBPA, because we need organized collectives of black parents on the same page, district by district, who take the fight into the school, fight for better special education, fight for better allocation of funds, fight for better disciplinary practices, fight for better school policies, fight for more genuine social support, fight to go into these school meetings together. Black parents have never been organized on a national level, and that is my goal, to organize black parents on a national level. The civil rights, we've been organized, labor, we've been organized, different black professional groups have been organized. We've never been organized as parents. We've never been organized as parents, and it's time for us to do so. But that's still a Band-Aid. That will stop the bleeding, but it doesn't stop the cut from taking place. In order to stop the cut from taking place, a solution is for us to build our own schools for our own children. It makes absolutely no sense that $1 trillion people, it makes no sense that $1 trillion people, the richest group of Africans on earth, we are the richest population of African people in the world. $1 trillion people, only 50 million of us, and yet and still we're trying to make white women teach black boys. We're trying to make white women teach black boys, something I don't think they spiritually are able to do, while at the same time we spend $9 billion on weave and perm every year. We spend $4 billion on liquor and alcohol every year. We spend $2 billion on Air Jordans every year. We spend $1 billion on McDonald's every year. We over-purchase Mercedes-Benz. We buy twice as many Mercedes as white folks. Now, we're less than 20% of the population. Black folk are at about 15% of America. 15% of America purchases more Mercedes-Benz than the white folk who are at least 50% of America. That doesn't make any sense. What it speaks to is the fact that our priorities are not in order. Our priorities are not in order. And whenever your priorities are not in order, your value system likewise is out of order. Our value system is in complete disarray. And most of us, being very honest here, most black people suffer from a childishness syndrome. And that speaks to the fact that we don't want to use our money to constructively build for ourselves. That's too much work. Children don't want to work. Children want to play. Instead, we rather use our money for fancy vacations, buy cars. Every other flyer I see in the black community is about hair or partying or concert. Every other flyer you see. We party too much. That's what children do. As the Bible says, and I'm not a Christian, but as the Bible says, when I was a child, I thought as a child. I spake as a child. But when I became an adult, when I became a man, I put away all childish things. Well, guess what? The black man and woman have not yet become adults because we have not yet put away all childish things. And most of our money goes to those childish things in the form of entertainment.
Yes, and most definitely. There is a diagnosis for that. They call it how we see it. They call it developmentally young. There's actually a disorder out there called the developmentally young for people who act much more younger than what they really are. So it reminds me of that when you said that. That kind of goes
we have a
into
survivalist mentality, though. We have a survivalist mentality. Black people are just surviving. We're not thriving. We're just surviving. And whenever you're functioning on, survival mentality, you don't think long term. You don't think long term.
Right.
One of the biggest things that separate us from all the other groups, one of the biggest habits that separate us from all the other groups in America, they are planning for their great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Generational.
They're planning for their great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren. In other words, they're thinking 8 generations down the road. 8. How many black people you know are thinking 8 generations down the road? They might be thinking one.
They're not even thinking for the ones they have.
Okay, maybe their kids. Okay, most people want to see their kids do okay, but as you said, and I agree with you, sister, most of them aren't even thinking one generation. Their kids. I see young children on a regular basis with Air Jordans on, 5 years old, Air Jordans, True Religion jeans, ear is already pierced, Kango hat, $300 leather jacket on in the wintertime, polo coat. And I'm looking, this boy got him $1,000 worth of clothes. He only 5. $1,000 worth of clothes. He only 5. And I'm willing to bet there's no life insurance. There's no college savings. There's no trust fund. There's nothing in place to safeguard that baby's life, God forbid, if the mother or father died. So the mother or father ain't even thinking about that child. You know what they're doing? They're thinking about themselves. Why is he wearing Jordans? You know why he's wearing Jordans? Because it makes the father look good. That's why he's wearing Jordans. Why she got on polo? Because it makes the mother look good. The child isn't wearing that for the child. The child don't know the difference between polo and Pro Wings, nor does the child care. But it's all about the parent's image. And we spend too much of our money on image and entertainment. That's what children do. Children ain't got no concern in the world except having fun. And that's exactly how black people function.
That is so true. Me being an entrepreneur, having my teenagers, bringing them into the business, teaching them the ways of the family business, even though they didn't want to. I say, hey, listen, I'll pay you minimum wage so that you can be able to earn something. But at the same token, even if I didn't, you're getting some skills up under your belt that if you decided to go out there and work for someone, you have a resume before you are even old enough to really technically work. And the feedback that I got from family members or other people that were not entrepreneurs were, oh, you shouldn't make them work. You should let them make their own decisions and figure out what they want to do, not walk in your shoes. But what I see is other nationalities, no matter if they're Asian or they're Middle Eastern and so on and so forth, Caucasian, their children are working in their business. And even when their children get older, they're working or have inherited a family business. So that goes back to that self-hatred, that crab in the barrel mentality. What are some of the things that contribute to this self-hatred, and what are some things that we can do to work away from this self-hatred?
Okay. Let's talk about some of the contributing factors. The central catalyst for the self-hate of black people is white supremacy. They taught us how to hate each other. Slavery was nothing but a socialization and self-hatred. That's all it was. You were punished for looking out for yourself and helping other black folks, and you was rewarded for working against other black folks. Okay, meritorious manumission laws where you could get your freedom by snitching on others. The whole slave system was designed to disintegrate any semblance of unity amongst black people. I got to say that again. The entire slave system was based on destroying any natural harmony or unity that existed amongst us. Now, there's contributing factors that maintain the self-hate. So the self-hate was introduced by the white man. But what are the factors that maintain the self-hate? Poverty, miseducation, and economic castration. And let's be clear, poverty is created by the same 2 factors that create violence: miseducation and economic castration, especially of black males. It's no coincidence that black men in America, black men in South Africa, black men in 3 highest rates of fratricide. What is it about black South Africa, black America, and black England that has black men killing each other more than anyone else kills them? Those 3 societies experience some of the worst levels of white oppression, highest levels of incarceration, highest levels of unemployment, highest levels of miseducation. You want to create a violent community? It's real simple. Make sure the schools don't work and make sure there's no jobs. Period. period. Make sure the schools don't work and make sure there are no jobs. Because the first responsibility of manhood is to protect and provide. In order to provide, you got to be educated to be successful. And then there must be an opportunity for you to be successful. That means you got to have schools and you got to have jobs, and we don't have either. This black-on-black crime piece, you don't see these levels of black-on-black crime until the 70s. This began in the 1970s. And that's no coincidence either. In the aftermath of the civil rights and the black power movement, they were destroyed by the United States government. America came into the black community, and they destroyed the economic infrastructure of the black community. They took all the factory jobs out, and they took all the industrial training programs out of the high schools. This was by design. And then they brought the crack in. So guess what happens when the schools don't work and there's no jobs and you introduce dope? You know what's going to happen? Two things. People are going to use it to try to suffocate their problems, or people are going to sell it to try to eliminate their problems. Users and sellers. And then you have people who don't want nothing to do with the dope. So now you have different competing interests in the black community. That's our problem. We're not on the same page about nothing. Everyone has a competing interest. Mm-hmm. And then the drug dealers finance certain people, and the people they finance don't want to go against them. And then the politicians come in, poverty pimps, and the preachers also poverty pimps. And the reason why do we call them poverty pimps? We call them poverty pimps because they exploit the poverty, but they do nothing to get rid of it. Show me a church that has ever eliminated poverty or tried to where they live at. You can't show me one. Show me a politician that has ever eliminated poverty or tried to. You can't show me one. You know why? Because without the poverty, there would be no need for them. You know why poor black people vote? They vote because they think if I put him in office, he'll help me make my life better. Why do we go to church? Because we think that if I go to church, he'll be able to pray for me a better life. So no one wants to see the black community get better. Too many people get paid off the black community being where it is, including white folks. Do you know how many not-for-profit organizations are in your community run by white folks getting paid off of poor blacks, whether it's drug addiction, homelessness, food, halfway houses, domestic abuse, teenage pregnancy? We could go on and on and on and on with all the poverty programs. And these organizations, $250,000 grants, $1 million grants. Can I ask you a question? Why are you putting the money into the poverty program? Why not put the money into the people that the poverty program
That's what I say.
is supposed to be helping? You know why they don't do it?
Exactly.
Because if you take that $1 million from the homeless shelter, if you take that $1 million from the food bank, if you take that $1 million from the teenage pregnancy program, the anti-violence initiative, if you take the money from them and give it to the people in the form of small business loans, guess what? All the problems that they are working to avoid will be eliminated on their own. And that's why they will never finance the people. They will finance the plan, but they won't finance the people because nobody wants to see the black man and woman rise. I'll give you another quick example.
Well, you know, they say that they do that. Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but you know they say that they do that by putting the money in the hands of the organization so that if they put it in the hands of the people, it won't be squandered away, and then they have to come back and beg for more because that's the reason why they have not now is because they squander it away.
Nonsense. Well, guess what the not-for-profits are doing? They're squandering it away too. They're squandering it away. First of all, most money that goes into a not-for-profit goes for personnel, salaries. It never goes to the people. Same thing with the school district. Over half of all the money in the school district goes to pay white teachers' salaries and benefits and retirement. Most of the money. The public school ain't nothing but a job bank for white women. It's salary money.
Now that's the truth. Because we had a newspaper. We had a newspaper article here in our county, in our city, about for years the school board has been overpaying employees while we still have a low graduation and education rate. Yeah. So you're right.
If most teachers were black, public school would have been destroyed a long time ago. They would have been stopped. There would be no public school. And most teachers were black, public school would have been destroyed. Problem is they need to get rid of public schools for black kids, but they need to save jobs for white women, and that's the issue. How do we get rid of these schools but save the jobs for white women? And that's why they open up the charters, because with the charters you shut down the public school, but you still save the job for the white female. But I was going to say, in Washington, D.C., as of last year, as you know, we have this new Smithsonian African American Museum. Okay, they spent $500 million building that museum. $500 million. $500 million. Now, the black community in Washington, D.C. is one of the most impoverished in the country. Look at this. Right where black people are starving and struggling, the government spent $500 million for a museum. And it was actually George W. Bush who authorized it, not Barack Obama. Barack Obama wouldn't dare touch anything black. It was George W. Bush who did it. But nonetheless, it shows you how they won't pay money. They won't pay money for anything involving black folks except your progress. Look at how much money they spend to keep black men locked up. They spend 3 times as much money to incarcerate than to educate. And then people say, well, if America is based on capitalism, why are they wasting money away if America is based on making the most money with the smallest amount of investment? That's what capitalism is all about, making the most money on the smallest amount of the investment. So people say, this doesn't make sense, Dr. Umar. If they can save money educating black kids, why are they spending it on incarceration? Why they spend $500 million on a lousy museum when they could have invested that in the black folks, and that would have reduced the incarceration in Washington, D.C., that would have gave us black jobs, black businesses, that would have reduced the... You know why? Because the first business of America is not capitalism. The first business of America is white supremacy. Let me say that one more time. The first business of America is not capitalism. The first business of America is white supremacy. And that's why our people need to thoroughly and fully understand that money don't run this country. White rule runs this country. Because you got black people running around talking about green is the only color that matters. No. The color that matters is the color of the hand that decided the money would be paid green. Because money ain't automatically green. Money ain't automatically green. Money comes from trees. Trees are brown. So who decided to make the money green? A white hand decided. So white power. America is run on white power. America isn't run on white money. And we really need to understand that. And until you understand that, stuff won't make sense to you. Financial decisions don't make sense unless you understand that they are based on racism.
Right. And you know what? To capitalize on that so that people can understand, because it took me a while. You do hear the terms white supremacy. You hear that all the time. And when you hear that word, you identify to, of course, 60s movements and before. And since we're in the generation that we're living in now, we don't experience those things to that level, but to a different level. I always see it as the history of America for black people being, or people of color being reservations, plantations, and then prisons. And so now looking at the movement from when they opened up the borders and let other people, foreigners in to build up the country even more, that they have turned black people into a new commodity as consumers. A
servant class. They turned us into a servant class. We're not even the underclass.
Yeah.
We're not even the underclass. The Mexicans have taken over the underclass. So black people are basically invisible now. And we participated in this, by the way, Queen. Every problem we got, we participate in it. Because we hate ourselves so much that we automatically support other folks. We hate ourselves so much that we automatically support other people in that self-hatred. See, we have a colorblind thing. We have a colorblind disease black people got, where they don't want to see nobody's color, not even their own. Okay, that colorblind is also an artifact of our self-hate. So we supported the immigrant, we supported the gays, we supported the women. Ain't nobody reciprocate. Remember, 100 years ago, we supported the European Jews. Jews don't want nothing to do with black folks now. They used you and they dismissed you. That's what everybody does with black folks. Homosexuals are doing it now. Now the homosexuals have pretty much gotten where they want. You don't see the homosexual movement standing up for black folks. Where was the gay groups with Philando Castile and Alton Sterling? Where was the gay groups with Sandra Bland and Michael Brown and Freddie Gray and Trayvon Martin? They wasn't there like that. You might have saw one or two. But the LGBT movement is very well organized. Why haven't they been coming to the forefront of all these black murders? They don't care about you. They use your solidarity so they can build up their political power, and then they turn their back on you. They've been doing this to black folks for 400 years, and we keep on falling for it. Unity by any means. I'm for everybody. I'm not just for black folks. How often do you hear that during the course of a year? I'm for everybody. I'm not just for black folks. But you don't hear Chinese saying, I'm not for Chinese. I'm for everybody. They for Chinese. They for themselves. Everybody for themselves except black folks because we hate ourselves. And this last immigrant thing, same thing. All these black folks fighting for immigration. Let the immigrants in. Let them in to do what? Do you know why they're even coming here? They're either coming here to replace you or exploit you. That's it. The Arabs are up in Michigan right now with all the gas stations exploiting the black dollar. Koreans and Chinese all in the black community exploiting the black dollar. And what did we see just happen a couple of weeks ago in New York City? They beat up a black woman inside of the damn fingernail shop and beat up her grandmom because they messed her eyelashes up and she said she wasn't going to pay for it, so they beat her up with brooms and dustpans. And guess what? Black folks are still going there to get their nails done. Then we had the other situation where the Korean punched the black woman in the face, punched her in her face. And let me explain to you why this happened. Everybody started to beat up on black folks because they saw how we let the white folks do it for so long. They said we can do it too. See, everybody learns how to treat us by watching how white people treat us. Everyone learns how to interact with black people by watching how white people interact with black folks. And since all these white folks been getting away with killing black folks, yes, exactly. So they're like, well, hell, if the white folks can get away with beating these people up, I can get away with beating these people up too. Why? Because the preacher ain't going to do nothing but tell them to forgive them and pray. Politician ain't going to say nothing black whatsoever because his bosses in the Democratic Party are going to admonish him for talking about anything racial. Grassroots organizations ain't going to say nothing about it because they don't want their grants cut off from the white man. Who is actually fighting for black folks? Who is fighting for black folks? I want to know because I don't know of an organization that's fighting for black folks. I know organizations that fight for everybody. I don't know any organizations fighting for black folks.
Well, you know, the problem is that I see is that different organizations, people of power organizations or whatnot, they put people of color to the forefront to either prosecute or deal with black people that pushes their agenda to dismiss any discrimination of color. So what do you do when you're in a situation where you're being disenfranchised due to discrimination, but you're dealing with someone that looks like you but has their mentality? How do you get past that? How do you deal with that little scheme?
It's not the color of the person doing the discriminating. It's the color of the organization. It is the culture of the institution that dictates racist behavior. Institutions control behavior. They pay you. You do what they tell you to do. So I don't care if the manager is black. If the organization is white, then that black manager is carrying out the energy and the interests of the organization. Barack Obama, who did nothing about all these police genocides against black folks while he was president. So a lot of black people stop short and say, oh, we can't criticize the president because he's black. The presidency is an institution. It's not a person. And the presidency of the United States is a white racist institution. Barack Obama just happens to be the person sitting in the chair, but the institution is white. But black people, being as politically uneducated as we are, suffering from the white Jesus syndrome, yes, we projected onto Barack Obama this messianic complex that he never wanted and never accepted. But it was very beneficial to white power because it got black people to sit down for 8 years and let white folks take everything from us that we fought for the past 300 years. In 8 years, we lost 300 years of progress. In 8 years under a black president, you lost 300 years of progress, and we can't blame nobody but ourselves. Once white folks knew black people would not hold Obama accountable for what's happening to them, they had a party. They had a damn Klan. America basically had an 8-year white supremacy picnic on black folks. They had an 8-year white supremacy picnic. The president of the United States ain't going to say nothing to us for how he treats black folks because he's scared of us and he don't love his own people enough. We could do whatever the hell we want. That's why they put him in office. To build up
you
the
know what, that
movement
makes
so
sense
strong
why people
that
who
it becomes
do
more
fight.
important than black folks. Say that again, sister.
That makes sense. That makes sense why the people who do stand up, the people who do fight, that do not get the national public attention when they're, redressing their grievances through protocol, where they're not getting anywhere. And it makes it feel like politicians and these different people of these institutions have some type of special privileges to do unto the public the same things that regular people are put in jail for. Because, like you say, 8 years down the drain, they've learned how to even attack the people who would raise up and be new Martin Luther Kings or Malcolm X's or Harriet Tubmans or whatnot. They found a way to institutionalize and through their institutions to suppress any kind of grievances.
You're not going to get any more of those types. You're not going to get any more of those types. And the reason you're not going to get any more of the Harriet Tubman, Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Medgar Evers, Huey P. Newton types is because the black community isn't raising any. That's number one. See, most of the people you just named came from parents who were very much about their people. They came from homes that we used to breed black power babies. We used to breed them. The reason why the 1800s, which is the 19th century, was the most successful century. It was the most successful century in the African world is because black people in that century were so committed to black progress. And in the century we're in now, we don't breed black power babies. You know who we breed? We breed basketball players. We breed football players. We breed reality show stars. We breed actors and athletes and entertainers. We ain't breed no black power babies. We have a community full of coons. Coons, that's what we have, a community full of coons. And once upon a time, there was more real black folks than coons. Now you got more coons than real black folks. Well,
it looks like we do have a few. You look like you're one of those bred babies.
Oh, you do have a few. You do have, but you only have a few. That's the problem. You don't have a critical mass. And you're not going to get that critical mass until you start educating your own kids. See, the purpose of public school, and you're in Jacksonville, Florida, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Shout out to
Education
Jacksonville.
system direct.
Yeah, and shout out to the brothers and sisters in Jacksonville. I should be coming back to Jacksonville before the year is out. It's been 2 years, but I should be back soon. But anyhow,
right.
I was going to say that the purpose of public school is to psychologically disarm the racial consciousness of black children. Let me say it again. The purpose of public school is to psychologically disarm the racial consciousness of black children. Once you get your white mother, because that's what your teacher is. See, for the first 5 years of your life, you get your black mother, your biological mother. She's the only person that teaches you, and your father. The first 5 years of a baby's life, their only teacher is their parents and the people they let exposed, the people they let their child be exposed to. But for the next 12 years after that, in fact, I'm not even going to say 12 because most of our kids are going to go to college. That's 4. Let's say the next 16, and some of them are going to go to grad school. That's another 2 to 4. So let's say the next 20, from 12 to 20, the next 12 to 20 years of a black child's life, they will be nursed off of the intellectual breast of their white mother, a.k.a. the classroom teacher.
Wow.
After 12 to 20 years of sucking on the proverbial intellectual breast of the white woman, there's no way in hell you're going to be dedicated to black folks. After she hugged you enough and smiled at you enough and made you pledge allegiance enough and sang the Star-Spangled Banner enough and taught you about Christopher Columbus enough, there's no way in hell you're still going to be interested in black folks. If we want to save our kids, we had better start giving them our own education.
Now, with your school, I know you've named some places like New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania that you were looking towards establishing a school. At what point are you stuck on those areas? It seems like in the
no, I'm not
northern
landlocked
region, or
anywhere.
does it matter
I'm not
anywhere?
landlocked anywhere.
Okay.
No, ma'am. I'm open to anywhere, and I have been for the longest time. And every week, I check real estate listings, not in any specific city, but across the country. It's not about the city. It's about the facility. It's not about the city. It's about the facility. So, no, I am not landlocked. I'm not geographically locked. I'm not committed. You know, I don't think I want to go as far as the West Coast, though. I will say that. It needs to be East, South, or Midwest, at least for the first school. You know, so that's basically 75% of the country. You know, but I'm wide open. I'm very much wide open. So it could be almost anywhere.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to discuss about that. I seen a few things that may pique your interest. And so that goes into sounds like, you know, we have been exploring the American social order that has been going on. And one of my concerns with, just like in your book, it's very vivid. I like the way you had the pills, you know, and on it says anger and depression and ADHD. And I've noticed that a lot of the things that students suffer from, like schizophrenia, depression, suicide, that they are medically induced due to the side effects of those medications from the ADHD, ADD, because, you know, when I took the opportunity to educate myself and look at the side effects on the medication for my child was ADHD and ADD, and they said this is rare, and they wasn't sure what kind of medications to put her on because they say, you know, one medication speeds you up, the other slows you down, and you never know, you know, what time they're going to be up or down. And when I looked at the side effects, schizophrenia, depression, suicide were part of the side effects, and I was floored. And I think a lot of parents don't know that some of the additional behaviors that they'll have while trying to substitute for one thing, they're going to be getting another.
Well, firstly, under no conditions should Black parents ever get their kids evaluated for ADHD, conduct disorder, or any of the other disruptive behavior disorders. Under no circumstances. Because you can't prove these things to exist. They're only professional opinions. And the purpose of the evaluation is to force medication. The purpose of the evaluation is to force medication. The evaluation is the key that they stick into the door that allows them to force you to drug your child. Because once he has that label, once your child has a label and you make the school aware of that, and we need to stop making the school aware of that, that's another problem we have with telling too much of our business and too much of our children's medical history to the school. They don't need to know all of that because they're going to use it against you. The schooling is an extension of the criminal and justice system, and anything you say can and will be used against you. So once you get the diagnosis and the school finds out and you refuse to medicate, well, their job is easy now. All they have to do is contact Child Protective Services, who will visit the home, and they will give you an ultimatum. Medicate your child, or we remove them from the house. We're not just going to remove him from the house. We are going to remove them from the house. Every child you got, because obviously you're not a good parent since you won't let us give baby crack to your baby. And that's all Ritalin and Adderall and Concerta is. It ain't nothing but synthesized cocaine. The same drug that's locking up Black men by the millions is being given to Black boys so they can sit still long enough for the white teachers to earn their pay.
But what gives them that kind of authority to go into the home like that?
Yeah, and they don't even have the authority. We give it to them. Because teachers are not doctors. They cannot write prescriptions for meds, and they can't make diagnoses. But if you listen to them and they send you down to the doctor or to the mental health clinic or to the hospital, The problem is we keep on following their direction. Here we go again with the whole, comatoseness of black folks in the face of white people. We are hypnotized by white power. Whenever white folks tell us to do something, we feel obligated to do it. We start marching our kids on down to the hospital for a diagnosis. That's all you got to do is say no.
But if we say
black
no,
mothers could just
and then they try to force
no,
themselves on us.
But they can't. As long as you say no and you make it clear that I don't want to be harassed and asked about this no more, it's over. It's over, but you got to say it forcefully. You can't say it insecure. Oh, I don't think I want to do that. You didn't answer that question right. They said, can we evaluate your son for special ed? They said, can you take your son to the clinic to get evaluated for ADHD? You are not supposed to. It's how you. It's the spirit. What did we say earlier? That you have to give the spirit to the child. Mm-hmm. The child has to learn revolutionary spirit from the teacher. The teacher is a revolutionary role model. You can't be a revolutionary role model over the computer. Well, guess what? The parent is also a revolutionary role model. And you have to train white folks on how to treat you because they don't know how. White folks don't know how to treat black folks. You have to train them and teach them. So when they ask you, can we evaluate your son, the answer is hell no. And please don't ask again. That's the answer. Not let me think about it.
So for those parents that has already done it, for those parents, how do those parents get out of it that didn't know that have,
Well, the strategy for how to deal with it would be different for each parent. And to that end, I want all your listeners to know that if they ever need to schedule a consultation with Dr. Umar Johnson, they can reach out to me to schedule that consultation. And they can do that by way of either texting me at 215-989-9858. Again, 215-989-9858. Or they can leave me a voicemail at 8444 Dr. Umar. That's 8444-DRUMAR. Or they can send me an email, drumarjohnson@yahoo.com, drumarjohnson@yahoo.com. And they can schedule a consultation with me because for some of them parents, the kids are so out of control that they might got to leave them on meds until they get the behavior together so the kid don't get expelled, the kid's out of school. For other parents, it might just be as simple to find a doctor who's willing to write a letter that says this child no longer needs medicine and I'm discontinuing the prescription. Then with other parents, they just got to keep on filling the prescriptions but not giving the kids the meds. So depending on their situation and depending on the child's manifestation of the so-called disorder, that will dictate how we deal with it. But see, the other thing, too, now that you brought this up, the worst thing you can do if your child is on meds is let the school know. It's the worst thing you can do. It ain't none of the school's business. See, if we didn't tell the school, they wouldn't know. The second worst thing you can do is give the meds to the school and ask them to give them to the child. That's the second worst thing. Don't give the damn drugs to the school. Why? Because when you decide to stop drugging your boy, and sooner or later you will once the side effects begin to manifest, guess what? You can't stop drugging them because you didn't give the school the power to give the med. So once they stop getting a prescription, guess what's going to happen? They're going to call you up and say, what happened to the prescription? He ain't had no Ritalin in 2 weeks. And when you ain't got a good answer, they're going to call the Child Protective Services on you and put you at risk of being accused and charged with medical neglect. And if you get charged with medical neglect, that goes on your child abuse clearance. You know that? That means you can lose your job. And it also means you won't be able to get other jobs. You have a dirty child abuse clearance. And in some states, it also goes on your criminal record. So this ADHD thing ain't no joke. It can literally destroy your life. Doing what white folks tell you to do with your children can literally destroy your life.
Now, there are some other books that you've written besides Psychoacademic Holocaust. What are the name of some of the other books that you have written?
There's some other books that I'm working on.
Them?
Yeah, there are some other books that I'm working on. Psychoacademic Holocaust is the only book I've completed. The other books that are in progress right now are Black Parent Advocate, which should be out next month. The Art of War for Dealing with America's Racist Public and Private Charters, Public and Charter Schools, which is a step-by-step manual for dealing with some of the major problems that your parent advocate. And then the other one is The Art of War for Sisters, the rules of relationships and dating. So that's going to be a book on dating and mating for Black women. And then also Unapologetically African, the Umar Johnson story, which is going to be an autobiography of mine, political autobiography, and also the philosophy and opinions of Dr. Umar Johnson, which is going to be a collection of articles that I write on different issues related to the ideology of Pan-Africanism. And then I'm also working on a couple of children's books, White Supremacy for Children, and also the Iceman, Sunman story. So about 8 books I'm working on.
Sounds like you're going to be very busy. Wow. It sounds
very,
like
very
you are
busy.
very busy with those. But it sounds exciting. When they are available, just like the one that's going to be available in about a month, how will the public be able to get them? Where is it? Amazon?
Well, number one, they can contact me.
How are they going to?
They can contact me, and they can pre-order Black Parent Advocate now. So that's the next book that'll hopefully be out next month. They can pre-order that now. So if anybody wants to pre-order Black Parent Advocate, they can email me or text me for the link. Again, 215-989-9858 or Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com. Folks text me every day. Doc, text me the link for the book, and I text them the link, and they buy it. And as soon as the book is ready, printed, they'll get their copy. My website should be up soon, drumarjohnson at .com, drumarjohnson.com. drumarjohnson.com is the website. It's down now, being worked on. Hopefully it'll be up by next month.
Now, another thing is the covert war that is going on that's destroying our children today in the United States. How long do you think it will take in order to get an impactful effect from now moving forward? Is this a...
It's not going to change.
It's not going to change.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. It's not going to change until we have our own schools and our own economic infrastructure. Black folks can't take care of black folks. So why would anybody be loyal? That's why we don't have any loyalty. That's why the black race has more traitors than any other race. It's easy to betray black folks because there's no consequences. The black community doesn't really help its own community do anything. We don't educate our kids. We don't have our own hospitals. We can't put nobody to work. See, loyalty comes natural to people who are being provided for. The black community doesn't provide for its own. And in return, its own shows no loyalty to it. See, it's easy to be loyal when you're a Jewish kid, Chinese kid, Arab kid, Mexican kid, because your community has things in place to help you. They might can't help you with everything, but they can help you with some things. What can the black community help us with? And even those places we do go to would help, most of them funded by white folks. So even though it's the black person helping, it's the white money actually doing the service. We have nothing to offer each other. We are the last.
One thing that disturbs me, it was a lot of bywords of America as well, all over the world. One of the things that disturbs me is the most undertold historical story about the Oklahoma bombing, Black Wall Street, where the same things, the same infrastructures that you were just speaking about, we had them. It's not like we, never developed it, but the United States bombed one of their own here on their own ground, and those people are still suffering from today. Do you think that is the reason why we don't have those infrastructures today? Because of that living example, I think that happened in the 1940s, the Oklahoma bombing, where there were black banks and hospitals and schools, is the reason why we're not moving forward to build today, especially all in one spot?
Couple thoughts. Number one, let us not forget the reason Black Wall Street, plural, because Tulsa was the most popular, but it wasn't the only one. The reason Black Wall Streets were so successful at that time is because black people were totally denied access to the white reality. You were Jim Crowed out of being with white folks. They absolutely did not want you around. You couldn't go to their school. You couldn't live in their neighborhood. You couldn't bury your dead with theirs. You couldn't go to their movie theaters. It was a totally separate society for blacks. Separate water fountains, separate home neighborhoods, separate buses, separate everything. So you was able to build because you had no choice. In other words, the white man made you do for yourself because he would not let you participate in what he created for himself. And although we celebrate the Black Wall Street, and we should, I think most of us are remiss in our failure to understand that the only reason why they worked in the first place is because white folks wouldn't give us access. But guess what happened? The white man gave you access. What did you do? You gave up all of your independent black communities. You gave up your black hospitals. You gave up your black schools. You gave up most of your black banks. Anything that was independently black owned was abandoned. And do you know why? We were in love with white folks from the very end of slavery. And the white man put an inferiority complex in us that made us feel that we had to have his validation in order to feel like we were good enough. And the minute that white man told the black doctor, you ain't got to work at the Frederick Douglass Hospital in South Philly no more, because we had a Frederick Douglass Hospital here in Philadelphia, black. White man said, you ain't got to work there no more. Why don't you come on up here to the University of Pennsylvania's hospital? So guess what all the black professionals did? They abandoned the black community for a better life with the crackers. That's what they did. It was our fault. Guess what? If America would have integrated sooner, you may have never had a Black Wall Street. If America integrated sooner, you may have never had a Black Wall Street. The outgrowth of a need for black people to build for themselves because the white man would not let them access his reality. And guess what? If the white man separated us again, we would probably do it again. It'd be harder now because the self-hate is worse. But we would achieve some degree of independence because you have to in order to survive. But the point I want you and your listeners to understand is Black Wall Street happened because white folks made it happen. The question is, would we have ever had a Black Wall Street if the white man did not deny us access to his community? Would we have ever built it? Because we love white folks. We love them to death, which is why you'll never get another Black Wall Street as long as you can be with white folks. You would rather have your child in a white school where they get mistreated than in a black school around all black kids where they get treated well. You would rather live in a white suburb where your neighbors don't even talk to you than live in a black neighborhood. Why is this? Because you have been taught by your oppressor that his ice is colder than yours. And that's why I tell you, Queen, no online school is going to change that. You want to change that mentality? You want to change that meditation? You want to change that type of consciousness? You're going to have to be in those children's face. When in the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, my boys are going to feel me, and they're going to see me. They can shake my hand. They're going to feel my spirit. I'm not sitting behind no computer screen. I'm in their face because that's what we need. We are in a state of crisis. And in the state of crisis, guess what? We cannot afford conveniences. Online schooling is a convenience, and we cannot afford it because the price is too great. Not the financial price, the psychological price, because it will not be a job well done. Take a kid from an online school, put them next to a school where a kid got taught by a teacher, not by a machine, and you'll see the difference.
Now, one thing that I see is a challenge is, yes, exactly what you mentioned earlier about the transition of independence from that Tulsa, Oklahoma time and period right prior before immigration. I would say that we were economically striving and better as a people then, pre-1960s, far as, economically, then post-1960s, because like you say, we have put away with all of those things, and this immigration has torn down our economic infrastructure. But when it deals with all of the access to things that they have integrated us into, I think their target was through access. So you have free public school, free charter schools, versus better education. They've moved on to private schools, tuition-based, so you have to pay for them. So now it becomes an affordability issue because our economic infrastructure was torn down. We don't have the income to survive. That is also coupled by, like you was mentioning earlier, our conditioning of survival and mismanagement of our money and not planning as a combination for others. So when it comes to your school, it will be, I think I heard in one of your interviews that you're not going to take any government funding or grants. It's going to be a tuition fee-based. How will parents be, how will it be made affordable? How would it be affordable?
The same way private schools are made affordable. Okay, I do cognitive assessments, IQ tests, for Black parents all the time. Schools are not required to have special education. They require that most children get an IQ test to make sure there's no intellectual disabilities, since they don't provide special designed instruction. Well, guess what? I can tell you that Black parents all over America are paying top dollar for their Black kids to go to white private schools. So there's no shortage of parents who are willing to pay for the education. That's not an issue for me at all. In fact, the only issue I'm going to have is what I'm going to do with all the parents whose children I don't have space for in my school. That's the only issue I'm going to have. Black parents are paying for private schools now. Okay? And if they sacrifice their weed bill, they sacrifice their partying bill and their clothing bill, okay, sacrifice the Mercedes-Benz and Air Jordans for the kids every month, they can definitely afford the tuition. It's about priority.
Your grade level for your school, is going to go from what ages? From what grade level?
Ultimately, it's going to be a pre-K to graduation, ultimately. But I can't say at this moment what grades I'm going to start with, because that's going to be dictated by the facility I get. The size of the facility, the size of the classrooms, the building occupancy, the code of occupancy, certificate of occupancy that lets me know how many kids I can have in here at one time. The building dictates that. So obviously, if you've got a 500-student building, you can start with a lot more grades than if you have a 300-student building. So it all depends on the building. A lot of that has to be customized to the actual real estate that you're going to be operating inside of.
Okay. And another question, as we were speaking about the independence as far as being entrepreneurs and business owners and being under fire and dealing with white supremacy. I know at one time you were dealing with the issue that your license was under fire because of your independent thinking. Tell us about your triumph over that situation and how it has conditioned you to move forward in the way that you approach or deal with things. Did it, change the course of what you were doing or made you go for it even harder?
Well, I think you're speaking of the State Board of Psychology of Pennsylvania, who are attempting to prevent me from earning a license. I have not pursued my license. And the reason I didn't is because I'm certified school psychologist. Most of our work is with children. So I really don't have a need for the license. That's why I never pursued it. They want to make sure I never get the license. And that was the whole purpose of that hearing. And, all that came about because of coons, jealous African Americans in the conscious community who simply just want to see me disappear. They continue to write letters of complaint to the State Board of Psychology, and that's what brought that on. It was Negroes who did that, not white folks. But at present, they have not yet made their decision. I had the hearing, which was publicized on YouTube, and the hearing officer did decide in my favor, a Black woman. However, she does not have the last word. She only makes a recommendation to the State Board of Psychology of Pennsylvania. Her decision that I was innocent of the charges is not binding. Her decision is only a recommendation. I am still waiting for the State Board of Psychology to issue their final decision. That's what we're waiting for now.
Okay. Thank you for that. Well, we wish you luck in those endeavors as well, because what you have to offer is exactly what we are needing because of just dealing with our children. Our children are our future, and we're seeing a lot of children that are going from adolescent stage going into the criminal justice system, just like you say, the school system is a feeder system and an extension of the judicial system and all of their other connected agencies. Moving on with, into being adults and that are suffering from mental retardation, and they're being, put in jails with regular people, with regular criminals, because we have a retaliatory type of judicial system and not a rehabilitative one. Seems to me they save the rehabilitation for their internal organizational infrastructure. I did a broadcast maybe last Sunday when we were talking about these things and how if something is done against citizens in the community, let's say from a political figure or officer or public servant, then nothing is done about that. But if the officer lies about it, for example, then they're reprimanded, but they still keep their job because they want to rehabilitate them and give them another opportunity or chance. But we don't see that happening in our systems that are in place for our youth. And so to me, that causes additional trauma because I think that everyone that goes through any kind of reprimand, whether if it's in the educational system or the judicial system for our youth, that it's a traumatizing experience for them, and then they need therapy, that they need psychological therapy for it. And so with that being said, what type of trauma are we as Africans facing, male and female, facing today in America, in our youth? What are they facing as well? The youth and the parents. What kind of trauma?
Well, our youth are traumatized in a million ways. They're traumatized by public school. They're traumatized by domestic violence. They're traumatized by sex abuse. They're traumatized by this LGBT crusade that's introducing unnatural and unhealthy lifestyles into our young people. They're traumatized 20 times over.
Mm-hmm.
Black people are traumatized. We still carry the traumatized genes of slavery within our blood and within our DNA. Now, the reason we can't heal is it is almost impossible to heal from a trauma that is still continuing. The trauma against African people never stopped. So asking Black people to heal while they're still being traumatized is like asking a rape victim to heal from her post-traumatic stress, and yet she's still being raped every night by the same assailant. How do you heal from being raped when you're still being raped? No amount of therapy is going to heal her because every night she goes home, she's getting raped again. That's exactly what happened to Black folks. We are disrespected daily, abused daily, insulted daily, oppressed daily. Begin to heal from last year's trauma, but while you're healing from last year's trauma, you are still reeling from this year's trauma. It is going to be almost impossible to heal us until we first create an independent reality. Once we go back to a Black Wall Street independent reality, then we can start healing because we don't have daily contact with white folks. White people are toxic for Black folks. Nobody wants to admit this. Being around white folk and being forced to act like something you're not, talk like something you're not, walk like something you're not, speak like something you're not, to be around people you know don't want you and then be subject to their disrespect and can't do anything about it because you don't want to lose your job or lose your life, that is not healthy for us. Integration is not healthy for Black folks because the people you're integrating with are trying to hate ourselves so much and love white people so much, we can't even see the sickness of integration.
Now, the psychological disorders in youth and adults that are in the educational system, do you ever see disorders such as psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissism being developed, not only in youth and that are probably even being infiltrated by, like you say, the teachers that are nursing them psychologically, when they're into the school system for the next 12 years. Do you ever see that as being part of some of the disorders that children are suffering from in the public school system?
Without question, some of that definitely does exist. We do have psychopathology, but because of our spiritual foundation, I would say it's a modern miracle that Black people aren't more crazy than we are. It's a modern miracle. What we've been through and continue to endure, you would think that we would be going around conducting these mass shooting sprees with all the trauma that we have. But Black folks don't engage in those behaviors. Over 90% of all serial killers are white males. Middle-class white males lead the world in suicide. So the people that we're emulating are very unhealthy people, very unhealthy. But their unhealthiness hides behind a veneer of materialistic success. And see, that's another place where we need to improve. Our spiritual and our psychological goes hand in hand with Black folks because they're not separate entities at all. And one of the things we really need to recover and repair is our spiritual health, because Black people have never been a people, overcome by materialism. And that's exactly who we are now. That's exactly who we are. If I was to draw a biblical parallel from my African Hebrew brothers, they talk about how Moses had to go and get his people out of the wilderness because in the wilderness they had lost themselves. They forgot who they were. They started partying and drinking and participating in all types of evils. That's exactly what we're doing now. We're in the wilderness. We're in the wilderness, and we're losing ourselves. And in order to find ourselves, we're going to have to get our African spiritual foundation back. Nothing wrong with the other religions if you want to be a Hebrew, Muslim, or Christian, but we need to get our traditional African spirituality back because there's more to who we are, and there's more to the universe, and there's more to supreme consciousness, the one almighty God, sovereign Lord of the universe. There's more to spirit than the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. The Abrahamic dictatorship on African American spirituality has to end. Nothing wrong with it. I want to be clear. We don't have to get rid of it, but we need to parallel it. Okay, we need to contextualize it with our own traditional African spiritual foundation, Abrahamic faith.
I most definitely do have to say that, dealing with all of the options that are available to us now as parents, as educators, as families, single parent families, and, there's a lot of complaints here. I'm part of a lot of different organizations here. And one of the complaints that I see is the fight to always trying to get an institutional organization to change their ways and their policies, but they're their ways and their policies. And in my eyes, I see it as this way. Well, if it's their thing that they've created to do it their way, then create your own. Be the competition. But it's just, that's why they say only that 1%, that 2% of the population runs and dictates the lifestyle of the other 98, 99% is because, we have been conditioned with the mindset just to complete the task and don't want to put in the work or understand the goals. And so with that being said, until programs like yours, educational systems that are put together like yours are in place and there is access to it, to everyone, every place, then there has to be some alternative method of an alternative way to deal with and start removing gradually from the existing systems that just refuses to do right, because while you're fighting, one thing I find in, let's say, in judicial advocacy is that there's this thing called statute of limitations. And so you're waiting to hear, you file your complaint. Well, first you're arguing to find out who you need to file a complaint with, because nobody don't want to tell on the people who you're here to complain about. And I don't know, you can't do that. Then when you find it and go around them, then you're dealing with the situation of waiting for a reply and then waiting for them to get a reply. and then the next thing you know, they lose it or they shift it off to someone else. So you go through this cycle where it eats at your time in order for you to get resolved, and in the meantime, you're still dealing with that situation. You're still at that particular place, whether if it's a place of employment or in that school system. You move from one school system to the next. They transfer that record and those same issues in the file. So it makes it hard for you to bypass the bias and the discrimination, and with arguing and fighting and dealing with it. So some people are making the choices. Okay, well, I'm going to pull them from about this system and find some alternatives so I don't have to deal with it. But then you still have to look beyond, like you said in your book, that we have to condition our children to look beyond the future that is being set up for them to exist after high school, which is prison, when a lot of our children are not even making it in high school because the incarceration rate for our youth now was as young as 13 years old. Now I just had a family that said that they arrest them and send them to jail at 10 years old, at least here in this county. This particular child was 9, and they said, oh, you're lucky he wasn't 10 years old because we sent him to jail at 10 years old. So what do you have to say that is a good, well-thought-out plan among educators and professionals as yourself as a transitioning phase into success, no matter which way it is for yourself or for your child or for your family, professionally, economically, or educationally?
Well, number one, before we even come to that, Black folks are not interested in a separate reality. So that's number one. There's a few of us who are. Most black people are not. They want in the white world. They love it. They love the trinkets of it. They love whatever benefits they think they're going to get. So they don't want to transition out. They don't. They want to stay with their masters. So that's number one. That's all the more reason why, ultimately, I want to give Black children a residential education, ultimately. And the reason I want to give them a residential education is because I know that as long as you educate them in the day and send them home to parents who are coons, it's going to be an uphill battle. You can still win, because what my doctrine and what I'm going to put in my students is going to be so strong that no matter what their parents are teaching at home, it won't even matter. It won't even matter. But at the same time, it's still a harder job, because what you do in the day will be attempted to be undone at night, not even on purpose, because the parents are paying for the kids to go to your school, so they want that. It's just that they've been conditioned along someone else's paradigm, and they've been conditioned for someone else's agenda. Everything done in America is done to fulfill some agenda or another. And the problem is Black people don't have an agenda of their own. We are literally the afterthought of everyone's mind, which is interesting because we make so many people rich outside of our community, but none of those people care nothing about you, and they can't. How do you respect the people who know you're taking advantage of them and they don't do nothing about it? It is not within the laws of nature. It's not within the laws of nature that you can respect the people who don't respect themselves. And self-respect is from the inside out. Until we get it for ourselves, we'll never get it to ourselves. Until we have it for ourselves, we'll never get it from anyone else. But again, it all starts with the children. There's an African proverb that says, you will know when God is tired of humanity or Black people, because no more babies will be born. When God is done, when it's time for this universe to be destroyed and a new one created in its place, which will happen, you will know, because won't no woman be able to conceive. As long as you're able to conceive, as long as women are able to conceive, Black women, that means God ain't giving up on us. Every time you see a new baby, a new infant, a new birth, a new baby shower, a new first birthday, that lets you know God hasn't quit on Black folks yet. When the babies stop, God is done with us. Until that time, we must fight.
We must continue to fight. Well, I know you conduct a lot of interviews, and I am so grateful that you had took the time to come on our show. I hope that this was an impactful interview, and I hope that it wasn't rhetorical and we were able to explore, hopefully, some issues and some questions that are not, often for you. But I thank you so much, and I want to end the show with some final thoughts, and also, some final thoughts that you may have for our listeners.
Well, number one, I would encourage your listeners to continue to support me and the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy campaign by mailing their donation to Fdmg Academy, P.O. Box 6872, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19132. I also want to let them know that they can reach out to me if they're having issues with their children by way of Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com or 8444 Dr. Umar or 215-989-9858. I will be speaking in Raleigh, North Carolina on this Sunday coming. I'll be in Shreveport, Louisiana on September the 14th. I'll be in Dallas, Texas, December the 30th. I also have Birmingham, England on October the 27th, London, England, November the 3rd. I'll be going to Haiti soon, but I will be making my way down to Jacksonville. In fact, I'm looking at a 3-city tour with Jacksonville, Florida, I think the Georgia, and one other city in Georgia. So I will be coming back down that way soon. I also want to let folks know that I still have just a couple of seats left for my first annual course of Revolutionary Pan-African Nationalism Leadership Training Colloquium. I'm going to be teaching my first course. It is not online, because as you know, I don't believe in online. It's going to be in your face. We will meet one Saturday a month for 12 months. One Saturday each month for 12 months from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The first class will be in Philadelphia, which is the September class, because it's only once a month. So we will be in Philadelphia September the 8th. Anyone who's interested in taking the course, it is hard work. It's a lot of reading, and you will be graded. And if you don't make the grade, you will not be allowed to continue. But if anyone's interested in taking that course, they need to email me a one-page autobiographical letter of interest, why they want to take the course and who they are. And they can email that to Dr. Johnson, Dr. Umar Johnson, at yahoo.com.
Thank you so much for that information. This was a very educational and impactful interview, even for myself. I thank you, Mr. Umar Johnson, for being a guest on our show. We ran out of time in order for our listeners to be able to tune in and interact with questions, but maybe on another episode. So thank you, everyone, for listening to Rashama's Conscious Couch with our special guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. Glad that you were able to be here with us today. And as usual, in the meantime, get off of my couch.
Peace and love, sis.
Peace and love.